everyone. Welcome to PM Ready's Veterans Day virtual book talk titled Creating a Leader, an American Story. We are so glad to have everyone join us today. Now, let me tell you a bit about who we are. So, PM Ready is the nation's first youth-led, youth-driven 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to empowering the next generation with project management skills. So, yeah, so additionally, we are also proud to be an official certifying organization for the President's Volunteer Service Award, and we warmly welcome youth to join our global ambassador team. I'm so excited to introduce our meeting facilitator for today, Germaine Essen. She is part of PM Ready's Director of Speaker Bureau. Thank you so much for facilitating today's book talk. Germaine, I will now hand it over to you to introduce our special guest, Mr. Trivedi.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. So, as she has already said, my name is Germaine Essen, and I am an 11th grader. And I would like to introduce our beloved guest, Dr. Trivedi, a leading project manager and an expert who has guided very large, projects and all of that. But I want him to get, his word out. I don't want it to be like I'm telling all about him. So, Dr. Trivedi, feel free to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much, Germaine. And let me introduce myself. Many years ago, I started my career as an engineer and got my PhD, and then went to the academic world and started my journey into professionalism with being a professor at Southern Illinois University, and then over the years climbed the ladder, became the chairman of the department, then went on to become the dean and eventually the VP of academic affairs. And after reaching that status, I left all that and I went into consulting. So I went into the consulting world, and consulting and training became my new job and new career and all that. And the reason I took on that challenge was so that I could travel the world and look at organizations all over the world and look at different industries around the world and see, what are the differences between how we do things here and how things are done in the world. And eventually lived in England for 2 years and lived in Japan and lived in Germany and lived in Malaysia and Singapore and really became a consultant to the world. And one of my passion always has been training and writing. So over the last couple of years, Andrew Russell, who's my co-author, he is the CEO, has been the CEO for many organizations. So he and I came together. We have been very good friends for a long time. And we thought that maybe we need to, contribute some of the things that we do
Mhm.
and write a book about it so that people can gain a little bit into, what leadership is all about and, how do we go about it. So that's how the book came about. And on a personal side, I have three wonderful boys, one in New York, one in Houston, and one in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So all good. And that's a little bit about myself,
Thank
Germaine. So,
you.
so
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you. That was great. And honestly, that leads us to our next question, which I was going to ask. So you did talk about the book that you wrote. You got a little bit into the detail with that, but I want to ask again, what really inspired you into writing this book? What was your thought process? What was your vision when you kind of thought of writing this book with your friend? I want us to go a little more into details about that.
absolutely. No, that's a terrific question. So the thing about when you think about leadership, right? All of us are in some way leaders, right? We do a lot of things and so forth. But somewhere along the line, we're all different people, right? So one of my passion, ever since I was a teenager, has always been writing. So I've been writing ever since I was a teenager. I was writing little stories, a little poetry, little all kinds of things. But then, of course, I went into the commercial side of things. and went into education and so forth. But somewhere that, the passion for writing and passion for sharing never goes away. So the first thing I did was I wrote a book on project management. And that book on project management was strictly on humor and things like that. But over the last many years, I've been consulting for a lot of organization at the C level. And one of the things that really led me to write the book is how do CEOs look at a leadership quality? How do they envision? How do they vision things? How do they create a strategy? How do they think about the employees? How do they think about all these wonderful things that they are supposed to be doing for the organization? So that led me to really get into the depth of how leaders behave. What kind of behavior is expected of a leader? What is it that makes them a leader, right? What are the characteristics of a leader? And at the end of the day, how about the human side, right? If you become a leader, do you lose that human touch? So what are some of these things? And in thinking about all this, I said, well, let's look at it from working with an actual CEO who has been the CEO of many organizations, and let's study him and let's see how he does things, and let's see how he looks at success from a perspective and all that. So that is the reason that this book came about. Yep.
Yeah, sounds awesome. I like that. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, going into someone's POV to kind of write about that experience. So that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for sharing about those insights on leadership. That brings up a lot of things, that a lot of, new project managers want to think about. How do you become a leader? How do you become a great, successful leader? How can you positively lead people into, awesome projects? So I really like that you talked about that. But now I want us to dive a little deeper into your work in different industries. Because I know you talked about how you worked in different industries, you moved around, kind of have an experience in kind of the multi different types of industries. So my question to you is, how does project management like vary across different industries? Like let's say you were working in, IT and all that. How does project management like is different? How is it different in these other industries that you have worked in?
That's again a wonderful question, right? So the thing what all of you have to think about is project management is nothing new, right? So if you look at the Taj Mahal, which was built, 300 years ago, or even if you look at the Great Wall of China, or if you look at the pyramids, they were not built without the knowledge of project management, right? So they didn't just start building and say, well, where do we go from here? So there was a lot of thought even given at that level 300 years ago. And how do we build a structure like that? So the field of project management is very old. It is not nothing new. But what happens is that recently, over the last 20 years, project management has become very, very increasingly important. And project managers are paid very handsomely. Why? Because what has happened in the field of project management and also in the field of industry is we need to come up with new products, and we need to come up with new services, and we need to come up with new inventions, and we need to come up with within a very short cycle time. So when you look at efficiency, when you look at lean, when you look at speeding up the cycle time, when you look at developing a high performance team, that is not easy. Now, the concept of project management originally started in the construction industry, but now we go from a construction industry to IT, to banking, to healthcare, to you name it, right? Everywhere, project management is very essential and is needed. So if you look at IT industry, what is the purpose of an IT industry? To come up with software, to come up with, different applications and so forth, right? And what is the intent of that? The intent of that is to come up with this application and software in a very speedy manner. And how do you create that? You can only do it by creating a high performance team and have the ability to combine the scope and the schedule and the cost and the communication and the stakeholder management, everything needs to be put together. That is the strength of the PM. So when you look at a project manager and when you look at different industry, what is common amongst the project manager and different industry is one, the ability to put people together. Two, the creation of high performance team. Three, the ability to use soft skills, negotiation, strategy, communication, right? Conflict resolution, all that, right? So you have, it is not an easy skill.
Yeah.
According to LinkedIn, project management is the fourth most important skill that one could possess, right? So one of the things that you have to think about is it is the same person who has to be technically smart, who has to understand the depth of project management, who has to understand how to deal with people, who has to understand how to motivate people, how to manage people, how to manage money, how to manage costs, how to manage schedule. That is not easy. That's the reason that project managers today have become very important. And when you look at different industries, of course, the subject matter is different, right? So when you look at an IT industry, from a banking industry to a healthcare industry, the subjects are different. One is about coming up with the right drug at the right time. One is about banking to come up with the right product that can sell to the customer and makes the
Yeah.
bank money. One thing would be, if you look at other industries. So there's a lot of those things that you have to have some knowledge about. But most of it is given what you need to come up with. The project manager has a fundamental understanding of how to create, how to understand scope, how to create a schedule, how to come up with a cost. So that's why if I'm a project manager, I could fit into any industry. So, as a consultant, I can tell you over the past 20 years, I have consulted with every industry you can think of. I've been in the finance industry, I've been in the healthcare industry, I've been in the security industry, I've been in the IT industry, you name it. So, the
Yeah.
skills are transferable. Like,
Yeah. That's very fascinating. That's very fascinating. And honestly, and I like how you say like you've been in different industries and you're very, diverse because I think when becoming a project manager, you have to be able to be open and diverse to, different industries, being able to navigate these different industries with your skills. So I really like that. You have that experience. That is awesome. That's great. And that also will lead me to my next question. So I wanted to talk about your role in setting up project management offices in large corporations. So I know that one of your specialities is setting up PMOs for large organizations. Could you share some key challenges you face in establishing a PMO and how you ensure it aligns with a company's long-term vision?
yeah, so the first thing is the concept of a PM. So PMO originally, if you think about the concept of PMO, it started off about 30 years ago, where the PMO just started to become more and more popular. But PMO, the first thing you have to understand is that PMO is kind of a bureaucratic uh, institution. So when you create a PMO, you're creating another position, you're creating another, the whole subset of a department and so forth. And then, of course, you're going to give power to the PMO to run the projects, to create the standards for the projects and so forth. So when you think about a PMO, the PMO is not something that everybody loves it. So PMO, some people love it, some people don't love it, and so forth. But let's go to the core of why a PMO is important and idealistically how a PMO can be useful and so forth. So what happens is in many big organizations, and typically PMO is only, you will only see PMOs, formal PMOs in mid to large size companies. You won't see it in the smaller companies because they don't have the budget to create PMOs. So typically PMOs are created in mid to large size organization. Now what happens is the reason the PMO becomes important or significant to these organizations is everybody has his own style of running projects, right? So if you have a big organization, there are multiple departments, there are multiple directors, there are multiple functional departments, and so forth. So everybody has their own way of running projects. Everybody has their own way of using the right software. Some use Microsoft projects, some use different software. But we don't want that. We don't want everybody to use whatever they want. As an organization, we want standardization. So we want the specific templates to be used for specific projects. We want the project charter to be written in a way that is consistent amongst all the departments and so forth, right? So the job of the PMO now becomes to create a governance with respect to everything project management, right? So that's where they look at how do we set up the standards? How do we create templates? How do we create the knowledge base? How do we create a structure by which all the projects are consistently delivered in a standardized format? So that's what the PMO is all about. Now, whenever you try to create a PMO within an organization, and I've seen this and I've created a lot of PMOs, you have, it is not easy. You're going to have a lot of pushback from a whole bunch of functional managers and so forth, right? Because they are thinking some of our power is being taken away by the PMO, right? So it is never easy to just come up and say, we're going to start a PMO, because functional managers and all the department managers and all that, they are going to think like, hey, I'm the big guy here. Who is this person who's going to dictate to me how I run a project, right? So there has to be harmony. There has to be a fundamental understanding that the PMO is not there to challenge you. The PMO is there to support you. So whatever you're doing, whatever projects you're running, if we can help you standardize that, if we can help you make them run more efficiently, then life is good, right? What's your problem? If I can help you do things better. So there is no ego here, right? But that is typically what happens with a PMO, right? And then there are different types of PM. If a PMO does not have that much power and it is supposed to be a support structure only, then you have less problem. But when the PMO director is very powerful and they dictate how every project needs to be run, then of course you're going to have a lot of pushback, and there will have to be some negotiations and all kinds of things. So the reason I'm telling you that is not from a negative perspective. The reason I'm telling you that is, in any of these situations, we should never assume that things are easy. From a definition perspective, things are easy because we can define something very nicely. But from a practical perspective, when you go and work for industries, when you're trying to be a PMO director, then you have to really know your stuff, right? You have to be fundamentally strong. You have to have a clear vision. You have to have the ability to negotiate and work with all the functional managers and the resource managers and all that. So that is where, the rubber meets the road, right? This is where the real execution is, where the real challenges are. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. But
Yes, most definitely. That was a great exploration of PMO. Honestly, that was like a great summarization of, how it works, what it is, and how you've implemented it in different scenarios. And that was really, really insightful. And I really enjoyed how you talked about organization, where, PMO, you have to kind of organize how the, business works, like the softwares we use, how things are organized and stuff like that. And that leads me also to my next question. So you mentioned the software, and I know that, and I wanted to ask you a little more questions because I know you kind of had a role in launching Microsoft's project. And my question to you is, your work on the Microsoft Project Server received high praise. Could you share some of the strategies that helped you drive adaptation, and how this project shaped your approach to managing technology implementations? Because you did say that you have a diverse kind of understanding in all different types of project management and all different categories. I want to kind of understand how this kind of approach in managing, the technology aspects of project management. Dr. You ready?
I think I got thrown out, but anyway, I'm back. Sorry if you missed anything, but okay, I got your question about Microsoft Project and the software and all. So the thing that can you hear me clearly now, everybody?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, okay, wonderful. So the thing what you have to think about is that if you look at project management, right, break it down. Always, whenever you talk about software, you have to be very clear about software, right? Software is a tool that allows you to be more efficient. But so far, of course, now AI is coming along, but so far, the
Yeah.
software is not going to make you intelligent. So if you don't know what you're doing, you will not know what you're doing, even if you use Microsoft Project or any other software. But if you know what you're doing, then the Microsoft Project or any other software are going to make you much smarter because it will allow you to process the data and allow you to see things from a very different perspective, right? So when you look at Microsoft Project, essentially what Microsoft Project does
Hard time hearing you. Could you please repeat that?
okay,
I think
all right.
there might be issues with the mic.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm in a conference hall and somehow the internet connection is not stable. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, all right. So I better make sure that we don't get messed. But anyway, so what I was saying is that when you look at Microsoft Project or any of the project services, what it does is it automates a lot of processes, right? So, as in project, you have to calculate all these formulas, estimate at completion and earned value and all that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with data when you're running a project. Software like Microsoft Project, what they do is they capture all the data and convert it into information. And that information becomes available to you right away. So you don't have to calculate anything. The information is presented to you in the right form. But what has to happen is there is a difference between understanding project management and understanding and becoming efficient on a software. So if you really want to learn Microsoft Project or any of those software, and you really want to become an expert, that's a whole separate ball game. So it is not that because you are a very good project manager, you automatically are an expert at Microsoft Project. You have to work towards it. You have to learn how to run the software, and it will take some effort to really know it to the level where you really can now combine your strength, your fundamental strength in project management to the actual software skills. And this is where you really get better. So this is how you take the approach. Yeah. So the two separate things, if you want to master both, you will have to approach both of them separately and really work hard at both of them, right? So that is what typically I train people on the project management and PMP and all that. But I also train people on Microsoft Project. And that again is a 3 day and 4 day and 5 day courses. So they are two separate things. So you have to understand that it is not some simple application that you can learn in 30 minutes or 45 minutes. There's a lot of effort that goes into mastering that. Germaine, does that answer your question? I know I lost you a couple times, so if you said something I didn't hear, please feel free to say it
No, no,
here.
I heard it. No, I heard everything you said. That was good. Yeah, I did hear it was a little bit of breakage, but I was able to comprehend. Hopefully that if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we will go over them during the end of our discussion. Yeah, but I definitely understand everything you said. That was a great explanation, honestly. And you talked about the different approaches because I think a lot of the times when people think that they have one skill mastered, like it might assume that that means that they have another skill already mastered. Like you may be already a project manager, but you also have to adapt yourself to the software part of it. Not just because you're good at the, hard on and stuff like that doesn't make you automatically good at the software. So I like how you kind of explain that. And you also talk about approaches. So I kind of want to go into that too, because that was a good point that you brought up, which also would lead is to our next question, which is I think that it's very effective, you know, to have different types of people, working in project management. And as you said, approaches. We work with software, we work with other people and stuff like that. What leadership qualities are most important in project management? Because there are different types of, people who comprehend stuff differently, who work differently. What is, in your opinion, some good leadership qualities that are very important in project management?
That is a very good question. The first thing you got to have is thick skin. That is number one. If you don't have thick skin, you should not be in the field of project management. Because what happens is that you're going to deal with a lot of people who are difficult to work with, who are completely different than how you think. And they're going to challenge you on a lot of things. They're going to not be motivated. They're going to do something else and so forth. So, and you know that PMI says that 90% of your project management skills should be communication. So you got to be very good at communication. But the reason that a lot of people don't get it is 90% of your skill, 90% of your time, PM's time is spent on communication. That doesn't mean that he or she is chatting. The reason 90% of your time is spent on communication is because communication is required for building trust. Communication is required for negotiating. Communication is required for conflict resolution. Communication is required for managing people. Communication is required for motivating people. So that is one of the things that, of course, you need to require. The other thing you have to require is people skills. You have to be very good at how do you motivate people. See, it's not easy to motivate others, right? First of all, it is not easy to motivate yourself. And it is not easy to motivate others. But as a PM, you're trying to bring together a team and you're trying to create a high performance team. So your ability to motivate people becomes very important. Your ability to manage people becomes very important, right? Uh, so all that becomes very important, right? So there's a question. Can you say something about the co-author, right? So the co-author is as Andrew is a very close friend of mine, right? So the reason this book became interesting is because Andrew comes from the army background. So he was an army major and he spent a lot of time in the army and he's a veteran and so forth. And he left all that, of course, then he retired from the army. And but he was a highly motivated individual. So when he retired from the army, he said, well, I'm going to make it successful in the business world. And he started off working, he climbed the ladder, he worked for different banks, and eventually became the CEO of a really big bank in Maryland, and then went on to become the VP of BBVA and SunTrust and a whole bunch of different banks, and then started another company called Sound Payments, which was again into the electronics and payment processing and all that. So here you're looking at a person who has two very distinguished careers. So one career completely in the military, in the army, and the different trips, the different call of duty to for different assignments, and on the other hand, a completely different person in the business world who has been extremely successful as a CEO of different banks and all over the world and things like that. So when you look at a person like that, the motivation for that person is simply I want to do something good for the world. So it is not about money, right? So one of the things that comes about in this book is that when you have people who are very successful but who are very dedicated to helping others, that makes a leader, right? So the combination of your skills along with your passion to help people, empathy, these are the characteristics that make for a leader, right? So whenever you think about a leader, it's not about how much money I have or my ability to create titles. It is how many people have you helped realize their potential. That is what leadership is about. So that is the strength of this book. We get into the core of what really leadership is and what some of the people have done in that arena. And how can you do something like that in that arena, right? Because, and the reason the word American story is that only in America we have the opportunity to do anything. We have the opportunity to do absolutely anything because this is the country where hard work is appreciated, where dedication to what you do is appreciated, where people don't criticize whether you have this title or that title, where people respect you for what you do and so forth, right? So this is a country where every opportunity is provided to you. And when every opportunity is provided to you, you need to take advantage of that opportunity. How many countries on the planet do you know where you can go to a library and there are tons and tons of books and there's tons of resources that you can absolutely access absolutely free? How many countries have all these chapters that you guys have, the PM Ready chapter, the PMI? How many countries have all that volunteerism where people are volunteering themselves to say, yeah, you know what? You want to learn about project management? Join the seminar. We'll provide you with a lot of information if you have the passion to become a project manager. You want to understand what it is? We'll bring the right speakers and they will talk about what you really need to know. So what happens is that, from the perspective of co-authoring the book, we have combined the strength of how to build businesses, not from a perspective of making money, but from a perspective of how do you build the strength of each and every person who works within that organization, and how do you raise that morale. So that is what the how things come together. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Jasmine. All right.
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry,
Trivedi.
Germaine, I
And
just want
thank
to make
you.
sure that if there's a question, I just wanted to answer it rather than delay it. Yeah.
No, thank you. That's all. That was great. Thank you for answering questions. That actually opens up, since we do finish at 8:40, that opens up. I'm gonna give the floor to Evelyn. Evelyn, did you have other questions that you had?
Yeah, so the other question is that why the title An American Story, right? And that's a little bit I explained about that. The thing is that we work differently, right? So our in America, when you think about America, what makes America great? And what makes America great is that we are a land which takes on chances. We are a land where every opportunity is provided to you, right? So when you think about America, America doesn't say to you that only if you're a money you're a leader. America respects your thoughts. America respects, everything that you do. What's your contribution to the society, right? So America is the only country where we really look at the strength of a person. And because of that, we say, you know what? This is how leaders are born. This is what we really need, right? Uh, the thing is that it's obviously I've worked in many countries, but think about it, right? If you work in any other country, the the opportunities, obviously there are some rich countries than us, Switzerland and a few, but the population is very small, and those are small countries. But if you really look at a lot of these countries, the countries are so structured and the countries are so streamlined in their thinking in a lot of ways that it is very difficult for everybody to say, I can do great things and they actually achieve it. We are the only country where you can go in any direction and be successful. Why? Because we are the only country that emphasizes that failures is the right way to grow. No other country would do that, but we do that. We do that. We respect people who fail because we know that they are trying. So that's why when you look at America, if you look at all the great companies around you, why do you think we have so many wonderful companies? And why do you think all the innovation and everything that happens is here? Why don't we see this kind of innovation all over the world? Of course, we also have a lot of money, but that's not the reason. The reason is that we are truly believe in free spirit and free thinking and all that, right? That's why the new thinking right now, what everybody, all the leaders are emphasizing is empowerment. Start giving power to everybody within the organization because each one of you has ideas that can turn into something wonderful. So that is why it's an American story. I don't think I was born in India and I came here as an undergraduate student. And I've looked at a lot of countries. People really don't recognize is the unlimited resources that are provided to you in the US that really provides you the environment to become a true leader, right? And of course, there are other things, but we have very few minutes left. So if
Thank
anybody
you,
has
Dr.
other
Trivedi.
question, yeah,
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually open the floor for any more Q&A. That was awesome. Thank you, Dr. Trivedi. If anyone else has any question, feel free to speak up. And then after that, we can start to wrap up things. So if you have any questions, come in the chat. So what is your next book idea?
it's interesting that I already have a book that is ready to be published. And the next book idea is more from a perspective of AI and
Hmm.
how do how do we deal with it, right? How does a common man think about what he or she is doing? And how do we think about moving into a phase where we become comfortable with some of the technology, right? So it is about, uh, it's going to be about adaptability. It is going to be about not feeling scared that we are going to be left alone and only the 5% of the people are going to be successful because they are at the cutting edge and so forth. So it's going to be a take on how do you prepare yourself for a society that is moving very fast, and what do you need to do to be comfortable and confident here? So that one is already written. It is hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months it will be out here. Thank you, that was a good question.
That was a great question, actually. I actually really like that book idea. That sounded really insightful. Are there actually any more questions? Feel free to type them in the chat. That was a great question, Jasmine.
You see, right, so I think
Well, if not, I do have a final question to wrap this up. A really quick question. So,
sure.
as we have talked about a lot of project management, what would be your top one? So, your top one advice to anyone wanting to become a project manager?
Right, so that is a great question. I think first of all, you only become a project manager if you are passionate about it, right? You
Mhm.
don't become a project manager unless you're passionate about it. So the first thing you need to think about is, what does your heart say? What is the expertise? What do you want to become? So, some people have an interest in becoming a medical doctor. Some people want to become an athlete and so forth. So the first thing is you need to start talking to PMs. What do they do? What kind of job they have? How do you deal with big projects? And it's very easy to think about project, right? So building a deck is a project, building a house is a project, building a hospital is a project, coming up with a new drug is a project. So there's plenty of examples of what projects are. But do you like to do that? Do you like to do that? Do you like to work in an organization where they give you a project to do and you got to pull all the resources and you come up with the result and all that? Do you like it? Do you like travel?
Yeah.
Right? Do you like dealing with difficult situations? Do you like to work under constraints to come up with something? Right. So that is where you need to. The second part to the question answer is how much money are you expecting to make? Right. So that's another thing. That do you have any expectation? Do you want to be in a particular field with respect to? So my short answer to that, Germaine, is you got to do your homework. So it's not
Yeah.
somebody tells you go and do project management and you do it. You have to do your homework. Do you like it? And if you really love project management, jump into that field with all your heart and then give it your best shot. And you'll be very successful, right? Don't do something where your interest is in something else and somebody told you this is a good field. Then you're going to suffer. So that's the first thing I tell people. Yeah.
Yeah, that was honestly a great answer. I definitely agree with that. Honestly, if you want to do something, you have to obviously be interested in it because if not, you're going to be miserable, at the end. So that's a really great answer. And I was really honored to have you here today and speaking with you. Thank you so much for everything you have done and said. I hope that everyone has gained a lot of insight based on Dr. Trivedi experience, knowledge, and everything else. I know I have. And this was honestly just a great meeting. And I will, hand it back off to Evelyn if she has anything else to say.
Thank you, Germaine, and thank you, Dr. Trivedi. I really look forward to reading your new book, your next book. I will be number one on the pre-order list. So yeah, thank you. Oh, let me just okay. Thank you all for joining us today. And before we wrap up, I would like to share some upcoming events that you might find interesting. Um, and you can just read it on the screen and you can register at on our website at www.pmready.org/events. And if you would like to purchase Dr. Trivedi's book, the QR code is listed on the screen. Um, so yeah, so thank you once again for joining us today. Let me just we appreciate your participation and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming event. So just like a quick reminder that one free PDU is provided for PMI certified members. Please complete our survey and subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our LinkedIn group. And yeah, thank you everyone. Have a nice day or have a nice night actually.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone. Have
Take
a
care.
nice